Tap that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are. I always wonder who's brave enough to listen to this kind of story at night. Ready? When I first moved into my new house last year, I thought it would finally be my fresh start. I had just gone through a rough breakup, and living alone felt like the perfect way to clear my head. The place was small, but beautiful, a one-story home in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by old oak trees. It had been empty for a while, but the price was almost suspiciously good. I remember signing the papers thinking, maybe I finally caught a break. The first week was peaceful. I spent my evenings unpacking boxes, listening to music, and getting used to the silence. But that silence quickly became heavy. At night, the air inside the house felt too still, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I'd catch myself lowering the volume on the TV because I thought I heard something, a faint tap from the hallway, or a shuffle from the kitchen. Each time, I told myself it was the house settling. Then came the smell. It started one evening while I was doing laundry. A faint metallic scent, like old blood, seemed to drift from the hallway. I cleaned everything, thinking maybe a pipe had rusted. But the next night, the smell was stronger, and when I followed it, it disappeared halfway down the hall. No leaks, no stains, just that faint, sickly sweetness that didn't belong. A few nights later, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Slow, dragging steps, like bare feet sliding across hardwood. They stopped right outside my bedroom door. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to open the door. The hallway was empty, bathed in weak moonlight from the window at the end. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was standing just out of sight, watching me. I barely slept after that. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, the wind brushing the siding. Then, the scratching started. It came from inside the walls near my bed. Light at first, almost like mice, but then it grew heavier, slower, deliberate. It wasn't scurrying, it was dragging, as if someone was running their nails along the wooden beams. By the third week, I started keeping the lights on at night. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. I didn't want to sound crazy. But one morning, while brushing my teeth, I noticed something that froze me. On the bathroom mirror, faint but visible through the fog, were 3 words traced in the condensation. "Get out now." I dropped the toothbrush and stumbled backward. No one else had been in the house. I hadn't written it. The message faded as the mirror dried, but the letters burned into my memory. I called my friend Eric that night, told him I might have raccoons or something in the attic. He came over with a flashlight and a baseball bat. We climbed up together, but the space was empty, just dust, insulation, and old wiring. As he turned to leave, he frowned. "Why is it so cold up here?" he asked. The attic was freezing. Our breath came out in clouds, even though it was summer. We left quickly, laughing it off, but my laugh sounded hollow. That night, I woke to my bedroom door creaking open by itself. I froze, staring at the dark gap. Something moved, just a shadow, low to the ground, slipping past the doorway. Then came the whisper. It wasn't a word at first, just breath, inches from my ear. When it finally spoke, it sounded like a voice dragged through static. "You shouldn't be here." I screamed and turned on the light. The room was empty. My door was wide open, and on the floorboards near the bed were 3 deep, parallel scratches, fresh enough that tiny splinters still curled up from the wood. I started staying with Eric for a few nights after that, but curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know what was happening in that house. So I set up my phone to record overnight, aimed at the bedroom door. The next morning, I watched the footage. For the first few hours, nothing. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the door slowly opened on its own. A dark shape, almost human but not, crawled halfway into the room and stopped. It had no face. Its body twitched like something underwater. Then it turned toward the camera, and the video cut to static. That was enough for me. I called the realtor, told her I wanted out. She sounded almost unsurprised. When I mentioned the strange activity, she sighed. "Look," she said quietly, "I shouldn't say this, but the man who owned that house before you, he killed himself, right in your bedroom. Police found him after neighbors complained about the smell, the metallic scent, the cold air, the scratching. Everything clicked at once. I moved out that same day. But sometimes when I lie in bed at my new apartment, I swear I still hear those dragging footsteps in the hallway. And once, just once, I woke to find my bedroom door slightly open, and the faintest trace of a metallic smell drifting through the dark. When I bought my house 3 years ago, I didn't think much about its history. It was old, sure, built in the 1950s, but it had character, a little wear and tear, some squeaky floors, nothing I couldn't fix. It felt like the kind of home you could settle down in. At least, that's what I told myself the day I moved in. I didn't realize I was sharing it with someone, or something, that never left. It started the first night I stayed there. I was sitting on the couch, surrounded by boxes, eating takeout, when I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy ones. I froze. I hadn't even unpacked yet. There shouldn't have been anyone up there. I grabbed a flashlight and crept up the stairs, trying to convince myself it was just the old wood shifting under its own weight. But when I reached the top, the air changed. You know that feeling when someone's standing behind you, just barely out of reach? That's exactly how it felt. Every room was empty. But when I turned to head back down, I heard it, a faint sound of humming. It was a woman's voice, low and soft, coming from the master bedroom. I stood there, too terrified to move, until it stopped. The next morning, I laughed it off. New house jitters, right? But the sounds didn't stop. Some nights it was the humming. Other nights, I'd wake up to muffled conversations, voices overlapping like a radio between stations. Once, I heard a child's giggle echo from the hallway outside my room. I don't have kids. After a few weeks, the activity grew more physical. Objects started moving. A framed photo I'd set on my dresser would end up on the floor, face down. Cabinets opened on their own. Lights flickered in rooms I wasn't even in. I even had a door slam shut so hard it cracked the frame. The worst part was the smell that followed. Old perfume and cigarette smoke, like someone had just been there seconds before I walked in. I finally decided to ask the neighbors if they knew anything about the house. An older woman across the street told me it had been empty for nearly a decade. Before that, a family of 4 had lived there, a husband, wife, and 2 kids. One winter night, their furnace malfunctioned while they were asleep. Carbon monoxide filled the house. They never woke up. The house had been sold off quietly years later. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. It made too much sense. The voices, the cold spots, the humming. Maybe they never left. I decided to test it. I set up my phone on a tripod and left it recording overnight in the hallway, just outside my bedroom. When I checked the footage the next morning, the first few hours were silent. Then, around 3:04 a.m., the hallway light flickered on by itself. A few seconds later, something moved past the camera, quick, like a shadow darting across the frame. But when I slowed it down, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a shadow. It was the faint outline of a woman in a nightgown walking barefoot down the hall. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was humming. I tried ignoring it after that. I stopped recording, stopped reacting. But whatever was in that house didn't like being ignored. The next night, I woke up to my bedroom door wide open and the sound of footsteps on the stairs. They stopped halfway down, and then a slow creak of the front door opening. I bolted out of bed, grabbed my flashlight, and ran downstairs. The front door was wide open, but not all the way. It looked like someone had been standing in the doorway, just watching. Outside, the street was empty. When I turned around, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the thin layer of dust on the wooden floor near the entryway were 4 sets of footprints, 2 large, 2 small, leading in from the door and stopping right where I was standing. The next morning, I packed a bag and checked into a motel. I didn't care about the mortgage or the repairs anymore. I just wanted out. But before I left for good, I went back one last time during the day to grab a few things. The house felt lighter in the sunlight, almost normal again. I was almost starting to think I imagined it all, until I walked past the living room. On the wall, written faintly in the dust like someone had traced it with their finger, were 5 words. "We're still living here too." I moved out that afternoon. The house was sold again a few months later. Every now and then, I drive by it just to see. The new owners have kids, 2 of them, around the same age as the ones who died there. Sometimes I see toys scattered across the yard, and once, just once, I could have sworn I saw someone standing in the upstairs window. A woman in a pale nightgown watching me drive away. I moved into my new house last year. I was excited to finally live alone. It was small, but perfect for me. A 2-bedroom place just outside town, quiet, surrounded by trees. The realtor mentioned it had a bit of history, but brushed it off when I asked what that meant. I should have pressed harder. The first few weeks were peaceful. I worked from home, unpacked slowly, got used to the creaky floors and the way the wind howled through the trees at night. But after a while, I started noticing something strange. Certain walls sounded hollow. When I'd walk past the guest bedroom and knock lightly, one part of the wall gave off a different sound, almost like there was space behind it, a gap. I assumed it was bad construction, until one night around 2 a.m. I heard it, a soft tapping coming from inside that same wall. 3 slow knocks, then silence. I froze. My phone was on the bed, and I just sat there staring at the wall, waiting. After about a minute, I heard it again, this time from lower down, closer to the floor. That wasn't pipes. That wasn't animals. It was deliberate. The next morning, I went into the guest room to inspect the wall more closely. It looked normal, freshly painted, no signs of damage or holes. But when I pressed my ear against it, I swear I could hear faint breathing. I told myself I was imagining it, but that night I dragged my mattress into the living room and slept with the lights on. Over the next week, things escalated. Objects started shifting slightly when I left the room. A chair turned a few inches. A photo frame tilted. Even my toothbrush moved spots on the counter. I didn't have friends over, and my doors were always locked. Still, every night around 2 a.m., the tapping would return. Always 3 knocks. Always from inside that same wall. Finally, I decided to do something about it. I borrowed a stud finder and a small sledgehammer from my cousin and told myself I'd open it up just to see. If it was raccoons, fine. If it was bad wiring, fine. Anything was better than not knowing. That night, after a few deep breaths, I started knocking small holes into the wall. The drywall broke easily, too easily. Behind it wasn't insulation or pipes. It was wood. A sealed wooden door, about 5 feet tall, with rusted hinges and a small metal latch. The smell that came out when I broke the last piece of drywall was something I'll never forget. Damp, earthy, like rotting wood and mold. But there was something else underneath it, something sour. I stood there staring at the hidden door in my wall, debating whether to keep going. I should have stopped right there, but I didn't. I undid the latch and pulled it open. Behind it was a narrow, dark corridor, leading maybe 6 feet deep, then turning left. I pointed my flashlight inside, and my heart dropped. The walls were covered in children's drawings, crumpled pages taped to the wood, drawn in crayon, houses, stick figures, smiling faces. But one drawing near the bottom made my stomach twist. It was a picture of the exact same room I was standing in, except there was a figure drawn standing in the corner, watching. I wanted to close the door and never look again, but before I could, I heard something move. A faint scrape, like fingernails dragging along the wall deeper inside. Then came the whisper, "Don't close it. You'll wake him." I ran out of the room so fast I tripped over the hallway rug. I locked myself in my bedroom and didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called the police. I didn't even know what to tell them, just that I found a hidden space in my wall and thought someone might be living there. When they arrived, I stayed outside while they went in. It took them about 20 minutes to come back out. The look on their faces told me everything. They found a small room at the end of that corridor. Inside were a mattress, some old children's toys, and food wrappers that couldn't have been more than a few months old. Someone had been there recently, but whoever it was gone. The cops checked the property, the woods, even the crawl space. Nothing. They told me it might have been a squatter and advised me to stay somewhere else until they secured the place. I did. But even after I moved out, I couldn't stop thinking about one detail. Before I left, one of the officers quietly told me something strange. The drawings on the wall had names written under them: Mommy, Daddy, me, Baby. But under one of them, drawn in red crayon, was a fifth name I didn't recognize. It was scrawled in shaky letters: The Listener. He said the name appeared over and over again in different corners of the hidden room, as if whoever had been there wasn't living alone. I sold the house a few months later. Sometimes I still get emails from the new owners asking if I'd noticed weird sounds in the walls. I don't reply, because I know exactly what they're hearing, and if the tapping ever starts again, it's already too late. Moving into a new house is supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to build new memories and leave the past behind. But sometimes, the past never left. Whether it's the echo of someone else's life or something darker that refuses to be forgotten. These stories remind us that a house isn't just walls and windows, it's everything that's ever happened inside them. If you've ever experienced something strange in your home, something you still can't explain, share your story in the comments below. And remember, when the house feels wrong, sometimes it's not just your imagination. Good night.